Pandemics have been ravaging humanity through centuries, often changing the course of history. From the earliest recorded pandemic which happened during the Peloponnesian War to the ongoing COVID-19, we have been associating viruses with the names of countries of their origin since a really long time. While identifying a new disease by its place of origin seems intuitive, history demonstrates that doing so can harm the people who live there. Consequences can include economic distress as tourists withdraw, investments go down, and solidarity between people weakens. Linking a specific disease with a specific place can lead to discrimination, stigmatization, and avoidance of a town or village. COVID-19 originated in 2019 and began spreading throughout the world in early 2020. The entire world stopped functioning and countries went into lockdowns like never before. #China virus and #Wuhan virus trended online everywhere. Ever since COVID-19 has been spreading, Asian Americans and Asians around the world have noted a spike in discrimination and xenophobic attacks. From encountering hostile interactions while riding in public transport to experiencing microaggression while simply walking down the street, they have witnessed it all. But calling COVID-19 as the Chinese virus or the Wuhan virus is downright wrong. It's important for us to remember that words matter and the language we use has power. In addition to inflaming racism, emphasizing the foreign or external origins of a disease influences how people understand their own risk of disease and whether they change their behavior. Despite the name Spanish flu, the disease which occurred during 1918 to 1920 likely did not start in Spain. Spain was a neutral nation during World War I and did not enforce strict censorship of its press, which could therefore freely publish early accounts of the illness. As a result, people falsely believed the illness was specific to Spain and the name Spanish flu stuck. An estimated 500 million people from the South Seas to the North Pole fell victim to this flu. The WHO has adopted a method of giving a number to viruses, a neutral way for the world to handle diseases and fight them together. It also investigates diseases and how they spread. Today, the WHO is in China to investigate the coronavirus. It will be determined how this virus originated and spread. Whatever may be the findings, it will be the world that will have to unite and fight the disease together. Richa Sarod Dalal, Democracy News Live, New Delhi.
Good evening, I'm Rohit Gandhi and you're watching Democracy News Live. Welcome to our show, It Matters. Today, we're doing a show titled, The Virus of Racism. The world has been witnessing this issue in the wake of COVID-19 for more than a year now. As the epidemic began spreading outside of China, some media sources began using the term Chinese virus to describe COVID-19. People perceived to be Chinese or Asian have been associated with the coronavirus and have consequently suffered from the discrimination and unfair treatment and racism, also including physical attacks in some cases. The extent of this treatment is such that the Chinese migrants and their descendants across the world have become more scared of racism than the virus itself. According to an online survey of 1,904 Chinese residents across 70 countries, 25% of the respondents experienced discrimination of various forms. Studies show that in Britain, a shocking level of anti-Chinese racism has raised awareness of racism among people. Now, what we have to understand, these Chinese migrants, individuals have been more proactive than local populations in helping to curb the spread of the virus in towns of Prado near Florence. Yet, they have been widely accused of being the source of COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic has prompted researchers of Chinese origin to reflect on racial inequalities and also the need to raise their voices in public space. More generally, scientists, researchers, and health practitioners are engaging in a battle against the epidemic of prejudice by publishing articles, open letters, columns, and editorials that call for policy and media inclusiveness in the face of the public health emergency. understanding disease ecology and patterns of transmission at a point of origin are important, but persistently linking a disease to a specific place, particularly when other consensus terms exist, is downright wrong. It amounts to racism. Join us today for our show to discuss the issue is Dr. Pavithra Venkatagopalan. In fact, when I first thought of the idea, it came from Dr. Pavithra herself. She's a coronavirologist. She has a PhD in coronavirus studies from Arizona State University. She's an expert in the molecular biology of the virus. Dr. Pavithra is the director of two labs, Care Health in Chennai and Molecular Solutions in Bangalore, an NABL-accredited molecular biology lab in Bangalore. She's today based in Chennai. Also joining me is Dr. Babu. He's working as a consultant surgeon in the Hillingdon Hospital. He is also a visiting surgeon at Harefield Cardiothoracic Hospital, visiting Professor Brunel University, London, senior lecturer, Imperial College, London. He has worked in the COVID ward, operated on COVID patients, created a hub to operate on cancer patients. He sees greater than 100 patients face to face every week. Thank you, Dr. Pavithra, and thank you, Dr. Babu, for joining me today. It's a very important discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with you, Dr. Pavithra. You've talked about it before, you've discussed this before. First, explain to the audience how wrong is it to call this either a Wuhan virus or a Chinese virus?
You know, naming a virus actually has a lot of socio-economic impact, and we know this because anybody that's traveled to the West, every time they get an upset stomach, they'll say, hey, it's a deli belly. That they are actually refers to the poor hygiene that Indians traditionally have followed and the subsequent upset tummy that they used to get. That's pretty insulting. So why would another country not be insulted? So what happens when you call an infectious agent by a specific racial or a country, racial group or a country? People that have no connection to it get prejudiced, and they get called, and they are subject to different types of abuses. That's precisely why when the International Society for Taxonomy for viruses get together, they name it in a way that doesn't discriminate any particular population.
Absolutely. No, Dr. Pavithra, you're absolutely right. You know, I've seen a lot of media houses towing lines, especially after the former impeached president of the United States, Dr. Trump, if I want to call him Dr. Trump because he thought he was a doctor better than most doctors. When Donald called it the Wuhan or the Chinese virus, there were a lot of media houses that picked up that term. They thought they were going to play to the lobby so that the governments will back them. This is not some tool of political discrimination you pick up. You be honest to your journalism and use the terms that exist scientifically and what the World Health Organization backs. You don't start determining how you're going to be racist. Anyways, Dr. Babu, you are in England, and we see there has been a lot of pushback against Chinese migrants there as well, and you yourself see a lot of patients. Explain to me, I'm sure patients come and talk to you about this when they are talking about why this could be called a Chinese or a Wuhan virus. Explain to me your perspective on this first, and then we can get into more details.
Hi, good afternoon. To tell you the fact, I've not heard anybody talk to me as a Chinese virus and Wuhan virus. Britain is very, very careful in dealing with the viruses. They mentioned every details. They mentioned about its COVID-19, never mentioned about its origin from China, never mentioned about it's from Asia. And we maintained a very high integrity. It should be called as a COVID-19. Of course, some general population, there were a little bit of uneasiness when they see Chinese people. Sometimes even Japanese people also get involved in it because they look alike. But later on, things have changed. People don't look at it as Chinese virus or Wuhan virus. I still don't understand why it is called the Wuhan or Chinese virus. The virus is is pretty everywhere. In fact, I seen the first COVID virus infection in January 2020. That was the first patient came from India. I never knew about COVID virus. When we did a scan, we found some abnormal area. When we inquired, this lady was in India in December, northern part, suffered a severe fever for 2 to 3 weeks, literally died, and came back to Britain in January. So the virus was pretty everywhere at that time. So I never knew about it. Only when we did the antibody test later on in the March, we identified she suffered with the COVID virus. So I have not heard in Britain about it's as a Chinese virus.
Sure. And that's a good sign. It shows the sign of a society which is not prejudiced. Obviously, common people will sometimes get prejudiced based on a lot of the media reportage that may happen, but not being a prejudiced society is an important one. And as you saw that there were certain reports outside, as a physician, what do you tell, like, even if you hear commoners talk about it? What is the advice that you as a doctor believe should even the term Chinese or Wuhan virus ever be used, and how racist is it from your perspective?
It's a science is very, very bizarre. We call some name to it. When we talk about cancer, we call the pear-shaped or this thing, cauliflower growth, potato-like tumor. Likewise, scientists have started naming the virus from the origin or supposed to be originating from China. I don't think people should take it as the Chinese are responsible. It is the Chinese, it was discovered in China first and reported by China. I would take it that way. I always keep telling the patients, sometimes even my colleagues, the patients are not always innocent. It is the media, the political people when they talk about it, and I'm very proud of our politician. Not even one word they mentioned about China in the whole COVID crisis. So that suddenly what happened, people who talked about China or Wuhan, that completely disappeared from the market. Now they talk about COVID, that's all. There's nothing China linked. And most of the patients are happy to see a Chinese doctors, and nothing. It's become a normal life in Britain.
Dr. Pavithra, let me go to you now. Now, when you hear that on the Indian media scene, is there something you would like to tell those media networks that describe this as a Wuhan or a Chinese virus? Is there a message you have for them?
I'm so sorry, Rohit. You'll have to repeat the question because I lost the audio in the middle.
When you hear, an Indian media channel or American media channel, there are lots of those right-wing channels that exist. When you see them call it the Wuhan or the Chinese virus, is there a message you as a virologist want to give them?
The virus doesn't know race, the virus doesn't know gender, it doesn't know countries. All the virus knows is a cell. So why are you discriminating? Why are you giving the virus racial context? It so happened that the virus originated in China. In India, once in the initial stages, it was called, oh, the Chinese people are dirty. They eat bat soups, and that's why they got a virus from a bat. But if you look back, even in India, we've had Nipah virus in Kerala 2016, 15. That was of bat origin. Nobody eats bats in our country. So how did we get it? It just happened. So please don't give it a sense of an angle that doesn't exist, is what I want to say to everybody, because there's no conspiracy here. There is no motive in why this virus came from China. It just happened to happen there. Don't make an angle out of something that's not there.
Right. And it is very wrong to do it technically as well. There's a reason that the World Health Organization started using numbers for the virus and not they stopped associating it with places. There was a reason for it, right?
Right. Absolutely. Even now, there is the UK mutant, there is the Brazil mutant, there is the South African mutant, but these are nothing to do with the origin of those places. It just used to identify. But their technical terms are VUI, variant under investigation, whatever numbers. It's just that's not glamorous enough for a news media to quote.
Right, absolutely. It's a shortcut to take to begin,
Yes.
make it more sensational so that you can get a few more numbers. If, people are backing your channel and they're watching your channel, and you'll make a little more money on TRPs. But that's not the way forward. That's not the scientific approach to use. Dr. Babu?
No, that's not how scientists see the data as well.
Absolutely. Dr. Babu, let me come to you now. When you begin looking at, issues of racism in itself, we are not devoid of racism as a world. We recognize that whether you live in England, whether you live in the United States, or you live even in India for that matter, we're not devoid of racism. Explain to me, what does the medical community look at? When a medical community looks at, racism within this whole ecosystem, how does one push back? What is the kind of education that's required for a population to be able to stop being racist around, viruses?
I've been in United Kingdom since 1988. The racism, if you ask me, I've not met personally any racism. The reason for racism is we try to identify ourselves as different from the rest of the population. If you come to Britain, give respect to their society, become a part of a society and work with them. If you try to identify yourself as a separate, this is my priority, this is what I would like to do, this is what I used to do in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they don't like it. In fact, I've gone up to this level from 0 to say about 50 or whatever it is in the medical profession, all because of the white people, the white doctors, and white patients. So, in fact, racism is a completely different terminology, which I do not consider I'm a dark-colored person. When I live in Britain, only when I look at the mirror, oh, I'm dark. Otherwise, I'm a part of an individual. In fact, I've adopted some of them as my parents in Britain. We adopted a lot of children, white children. We become a part of it. So if we integrate with the society, you will be part of them. Of course, you will see here and there. I've seen some sort of discrimination, and even in India, even in Chennai, that happens. So I personally think the racism is how you want to take it. The second category comes, which we can talk about later on, is a reverse racism. So we create an impression that we are different, we like to be different from you. If that happens, we create an opportunity for others to act on you as you are a different race. This is what I want to start the discussion now here.
Sure. We're talking about reverse racism. You can land up actually being a reverse racist, and you can actually begin looking at other societies and decide not to amalgamate, and that's where a lot of the challenges come. Now, when we look at the virus itself, and we look at the way a lot of the world has handled China around it, what we're doing is we're dividing the fight against the virus at many, many levels. You as a community, you as a world community decide that you're going to fight the virus separately. What this has taught us, this whole COVID crisis has taught us, is that the global world community needs to be together. It cannot be operating in parts. In fact, just recently I saw a video by Bill Gates. He talks about how we need to create a global force to be able to battle the pandemic. We're going to play out that video.
We all want to return to the way things were before COVID-19. But there's one area where I hope we never go back. Our complacency about pandemics. We can get ahead of infectious disease outbreaks. By the next pandemic, I believe we can have what I call mega testing diagnostic platforms. They can be deployed quickly, cost very little, and test 20% of the entire population every week. We also want to get treatments out far faster next time. One of the most promising is monoclonal antibodies. These manufactured antibodies grab onto the virus and disable it, just like your immune system, and can reduce death rates by as much as 80%. I also think that we'll develop new vaccines quickly, in large part due to this new mRNA platform. mRNA will become faster to develop, easier to store, and lower cost. That's a huge breakthrough. To stop future pandemics quickly, we need to be able to spot disease outbreaks as soon as they happen anywhere in the world. And that requires a global alert system. If there turns out to be some new infectious pathogen, then we need a group of infectious disease responders to spring into action. Think of these as like pandemic firefighters. They're going to use their logistics, use their ability to build up capacity quickly. They're going to go wherever that problem is. Stopping the next pandemic will require a big investment. But I think of this as the best insurance policy the world could buy.
So we as a world community need to operate together. Need to stop discriminating and certainly stop being racist. And I think that's a message if we can take away from an It Matters show, that would be a good start to a better world. Dr. Pavithra, Dr. Babu, thank you very much for joining me for the show. It's a very important discussion. And I've been seeing this for the last whole year. A lot of right-wing racist networks have been talking about this Wuhan and Chinese virus. And that's no way to be. Thank you for watching. Good night and good luck.